So let's talk about Charlie Hebdo for a little bit, because I think that the reaction to Charlie Hebdo was really what my final straw was with sort of the progressive movement, because I saw so many people saying they shouldn't have done these cartoons. They focused on Islam. It turned out that it was something like 3% of the covers were about Islam. I was on a show actually on a network where somebody said it was 99% of the covers. I didn't have the information right in front of me, but I said I'm pretty sure that's not the case. But just the knee-jerk defense, and it was like there would be a line of, well, these people are dead, but then a tirade on the left of don't do this, don't do this.
Especially here.
Was it more here, do you think?
Yes, I think so.
What do you think that's about?
You had this event in New York. American Pen wanted to award to reward Charlie Hebdo for courage, and a lot of famous writers didn't want to show up because they didn't believe that they deserved this kind of award. And a lot of American left-wing intellectuals just got it wrong, because they look at this through the lens of race, and this is not about race. And it turns out that Charlie Hebdo, in fact, have been the staunchest defender of Muslims as a weak minority in France.
Most of the covers of Charlie Hebdo were mocking not Muslim people; they were mocking the dogmatic parts of the religion that are oppressing Muslim people.
The Pope. I mean, if you look at what they did to the Pope, I mean, what they did to the Prophet is just like a kindergarten. Very sexually explicit cartoons of the Pope, but mostly they were in fact mocking powerful politicians like Sarkozy or Le Pen and business magnates and things like that. It was 7 covers, I guess, out of around 500 that dealt with Islam and the Prophet. So it's just plain wrong. But it is true that in France you have this anti-clerical tradition on the left because of a very tough battle with the Catholic Church for many years, and it has played over into the way they look at religion in general. But they criticize and attack the Catholic Church far more than they criticize and attack Islam.
Yeah. Do you think that when people are doing this, when they're saying, well, don't offend them, don't offend them, they realize, do you think at some level, some of them realize the actual bigotry that they're showing, which, George W. Bush came up with the phrase, the soft bigotry of low expectations, which now Bill Maher uses a lot and plenty of other people. Yes. It's bizarre, I guess, maybe that it came from George W. Bush, but to me, that actually... Did you say that? It was a speechwriter of his that came up with it. He got it out there. Yeah. But now it seems so obvious to me that that's what's happening here.
Yes. What you're saying is the racism of low expectations.
Yeah, yes. What you're saying is, well, you can mock Christianity because they have a sense of humor. They can deal with it. They'll be all right.
They're grown-ups.
They're grown-ups. But if you mock Islam, well, then if you get shot or somebody blows something up, it was kind of your fault.
It's really discriminating against Muslims because you look at them as if they are animals or children. They can't handle this like other believers and people can. And that's really discriminating.
Is that the saddest part for you, that what you did in 2005 wasn't based in humor, but actually Charlie Hebdo was based in great satire and humor? And as you said, I mean, France has an incredible tradition of satire, that if we don't allow these people, not allow them, they should have the same right that everyone else has to make fun of their own institutions, and we should be able to make fun of them, and they should be able to make fun of ours. If we don't allow them, we're actually robbing them of what is perhaps the most important thing that you can have as a human, because that's real freedom.
Yes, and in fact, I have heard some of my Muslim friends talk that way, that we need hundreds of Charlie Hebdos in the Muslim world, because religion is really being used as a tool of oppression. And Christians can laugh at themselves because there is this freedom, in fact, for many Christians within their religion, that they can listen to a dirty joke about the Virgin Maria without being, feel that they have been attacked, or because there is a sense of freedom.
Yeah. I always say that the example I always use is that, do you ever see the show Family Guy? It's big here.
No.
I don't know if it's big in Denmark, but it mocks everybody relentlessly. They do plenty of. There was an episode where they went back to Bethlehem in 2000 whatever. 2,000 years ago, and they have Jesus bathing to porn music, and a little baby walks in and watches him. But you need that satire, because that's ridiculous. Or you could watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, and every episode is Larry David making fun of Judaism. You need that.
And the former editor of Charlie Hebdo, I think, put it in a very eloquent way. He said, what kind of civilization are we if we cannot mock, make fun, and ridicule the religion in which name trains, airplanes, and people are being blown up? I think, in fact, satire is a very civilized reaction to violence. Mm-hmm. You don't respond through violence, you laugh, you make people laugh. And that is, in a way, it's a way of managing a difficult situation. And I think it is very civilized. I mean, when Charlie Hebdo or when our cartoons were published, it was a reaction to violence, intimidation, and threats in the public space. We did not respond in kind, but we said, okay, let's have some fun. Yeah. And I think it's a big challenge for Muslims to work out a relationship to their faith, where it is possible to make fun without feeling, that your faith is being undermined, that it helps you to create a distance that is based in freedom, and that the Prophet Muhammad and the Quran is not being used to oppress you or control you socially, but there also is an element of freedom and free choice when you have the ability to laugh.
Yeah. I'm trying to get to a part of this where we can start spinning this in a way that'll be positive for society. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you on all the philosophic precepts you've laid out. I'm completely with you. Yeah. But at the same time, you're saying, you think that we're not calling them the far right, but those parties, those right parties, or the anti-immigration parties, let's say, are going to keep gaining strength. I suspect that type of populism will continue happening in America. The next time that there's a bad terrorist attack in any of these countries, now we live in a global world, it's going to increase those numbers. So is there a silver lining here? I mean, I know that there's a middle growing here, I think, that we're part of, but is there some sort of political piece of that?
Yeah, I think my problem with what you call the populist right is that they believe that we are at war with Islam. And most Muslims, in fact, buy into this legitimization of violence in the name of their religion. I don't believe that's the case, and I believe that we have to be very clear about definitions. I think we are in a hot war with jihadists, people who are killing and committing violence, and I believe we are in a cold war with Islamists who are not using violence but believe in the tenets of a very anti-democratic, anti-freedom ideology. Which means that we need to find believing Muslims, not apostates, not former Muslims, but true believers who subscribe to the values of liberal democracy, the secular state, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Because I believe this is basically a battle of ideas, and we cannot win this battle of ideas if we do not have true believers among Muslims on our side. So we have to start looking for them. And maybe Majid Nawaz, whom you mentioned, I don't know if he's still a believing Muslim, but at least he used to be. I have a dialogue with a Norwegian Muslims who wrote a book. Is it possible to love the Quran and Norway at the same time? And I like that book because he's very clear about the fact that free speech and freedom of religion is not up for negotiations. At the same time, he's a socially conservative Muslim. we disagree on most things,
Right.
but I think we agree on the fundamentals of secular democracy.
Yeah. And that's exactly where we have to find these people. Do you think that there are enough of them? Because my fear is that we know that there are 1.3 billion Muslim people. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the problem is that that a lot of them have been sort of chilled. They've been afraid to say what they speak because of all of it, because they're getting it from both sides, right? If they speak about it, then the more conservative, certainly the Islamists, are going to be angry at them. And if they speak about it, they know that they're going to be treated as, from the left, they know they're going to be treated like they were sellouts to their own community or something.
Yes.
So this is a really narrow group of people that we have to try to figure out.
It's really
where
an
they are.
uphill struggle, and I believe that Islam is in a deep crisis. And it will take decades, I think, to fight out this ideological struggle where you have to work out a religious doctrine that is compatible with a multi-religious, multicultural democracy. It's not going to be easy, and we have to be honest about that. I also think it doesn't help when Western politicians say that the jihadists, they have just taken Islam hostage, that this has nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah.
It has. And
we have to take their word for it. That's what I
mean,
say, right?
I mean,
if they say it, who am I to tell them that it's not the case?
One of the reasons why this battle is so difficult is because the jihadists, in fact, they stand on a strong theological ground. There are phrases and verses in the Quran that justify violence against non-believers, against blasphemers, against apostates. And they have this utopia that they want to recreate the caliphate, the time of the Prophet Muhammad and the first caliphs after the Prophet. And if you say this has nothing to do with Islam, you never get into this battle of ideas. And it's clear when you talk to Muslims that they feel very intimidated by the theological arguments being used by the jihadists. And for you and me, it doesn't sound intimidating when people, tell me, Flemming, you are a bad Christian, or they tell you that you're a bad Jew, or whatever it is. But
I get plenty of that.
If you say to a Muslim, you are a bad Muslim, it feels very intimidating. So we should not refrain from getting into this fight and acknowledge that the jihadists, in fact, do make references to the Quran, and that there is a tradition within Islam that is violent and that wants to kill apostates and blasphemers and so on and so forth.
Do you think that some of the apologists are strangely misguided? So, for example, during this whole thing with the executive order and Trump and the refugees, I saw a few very popular people on Twitter, people with millions of followers, tweeting things to the effect of, you know how you get terrorists? You ban all people from your country. And it does go to the soft bigotry of low expectations again, because it's saying, wait a minute, if you don't let everyone in, well, then they might start blowing themselves up or blowing you up. Like it's almost as if the logic isn't thought out. So what we really need is a resurgence of logic more than anything else.
Exactly, and we have to be very clear that the people who commit violence are responsible for violence. Not Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Angela Merkel. It's the people who commit violence. And quite often I also experienced that during the Khartoum crisis. People would accuse me of being responsible for violence in other parts of the world, which is a slippery slope. If you open that door, it never stops. You have to be very clear that an individual, we have reason, we have a mind as human beings to make a decision about how to react to other people's speech and cartoons. And it means that we are responsible agents, not people who offend us or say something offensive. And I also think that we have to educate ourselves about Islam. I mean, I didn't know that there was a ban on images of the Prophet 11 years ago. And I had a crash course, I would say, for the
Did
past
you really?
11 years.
Did you really have no idea
No.
when you did that, and no one said to you, "As we're going to do it"? Nobody at the newspaper
No,
said,
not in that specific way, and I didn't hear about it until afterwards. But it turned out that there were voices inside the newspaper that it didn't make an exact warning, but they said to the editor-in-chief that we should be cautious. But I never got that word.
Yeah. And
but
I've heard you say,
I don't think it mattered that much because that's not the way we treat ideas in the West. You shouldn't consult, lawyers and I mean, you can consult a lawyer if you want to know what you want to publish is legal.
right.
But otherwise, you have to make a decision for yourself whether you think it's legitimate and makes sense. But I think we all know too little about Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And when people say this has nothing to do with Islam, they really don't know the history of Islam and what have been done and not done in the name of the Prophet throughout history.
Yeah. I almost feel like I don't know that we have to know more about Islam. We have to know more about what our Western values are.
Absolutely.
Maybe it may
I
be
agree.
both of those things at the same
No,
time,
but
I
it
would
goes
rather
right to-
people focus on that.
Absolutely, I agree 100%, and that is one of the reasons why we are not facing up to that challenge. We have forgotten who we are, where we come from, and what is the foundation of our success in the West.
Yeah. I've heard you say that you don't regret publishing the
No.
cartoons. Yeah.
And when people ask me, would you do it again? It's usually I say, if I say I would not do it again, I will send a very unfortunate signals to the people who commit the violence.
Yeah.
And basically say to them, if you threaten enough, if you kill enough people, I will do exactly as you please. So why stop?
Yeah. And that's the message that all my friends on the left are sending to them all the time. Every time you say it, don't publish it, don't publish. Well, what else? We know they don't like gay marriage, so should we not have gay marriage? We know whatever else they don't like,
Exactly.
whatever else we're pushing on them of our secularism, should we just be hostages to all of that stuff?
Exactly, and that's why we have also forgot that free speech is important to minorities. If you look at social movements throughout history, women's rights, workers' rights, gay rights, the civil rights movement, they all benefited from free speech. Without freedom of expression, they could not have gone all the way they've gone. And the powers that be in their time, they used hate speech laws, blasphemy laws to silence these social movements for change. But today, it's as if people have forgotten that history, that in fact freedom of speech is paramount to minority movements and individuals who are fighting for social change.
Yeah, so I have one more question for you, which I think wraps this all up perfectly, which goes to the email that I get more than anything else, which is people tell me all the time they're afraid to say what they think. Not because they're going to be killed by a jihadist necessarily, but because they don't want to be called a bigot or whatever, they don't want to be defriended on Facebook or any of that stuff. So as someone who truly, in the scheme of things, I mean, you have been right in the center of this. This is your life for now on. I think you've made the argument already, but what's the best argument you can give from a personal thing? Because I would imagine the personal toll has probably been quite great. You said you have to live with certain security measures and things like that. But what's the best argument you can make of why we need more people?
No, I think you have, I mean, it's not nice to be called a bigot and a Nazi and a fascist, whatever. But you have to think through your own position. And when I was faced with that challenge, I was very surprised because I didn't have the intentions that people ascribed to me. So I really had to think through what I believe in, and go through my experiences, the people I admire, the books I read, the principles I wanted to live my life in accordance with. And I ended up reinforcing my own conviction that that was the right thing to do, and that I was willing to defend those principles. And then you have to stand by, what you believe in, and just keep on explaining yourself, and then hope at some point people will get it. If they don't, maybe in a generation or two, there will be people who read your stuff and think, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. That's true. And you know, that's the way I look at it now. I have grandkids, and I'm starting to think about what my country and Europe will look like in 30, 40, 50 years. And I see my contribution not so much as something that is going on right now. I'm sure that future generations will face some of the same challenges at some point. And so I hope that they can go back and read about my story and hopefully learn a lesson or two.
Yeah, well, that's a perfectly fitting ending. We're going to be speaking at UCLA tomorrow, although by the time this video has gone up, we'll have done it already. But I love the idea of getting in front of some young minds and just putting it out there, and then hopefully they pick up on some of it. Some of them may be angry at us, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. And you guys can find out more about Flemming and check out his new book, Tyranny of Silence, at tyrannyofsilence.net.